Jesus claimed to be God. Was he divine, crazy, or evil? This morning, we're going to look at C.S. Lewis's Trilemma, in which he takes a logical step from Jesus' claim that he was God to either one of three conclusions. He said, I'm trying here to prevent anyone from saying a really foolish thing that people often say about Jesus. I am ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who is merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would be either a lunatic on the level of the man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else he is a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool. You could spit on him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us, and he did not intend to. So this argument that C.S. Lewis puts out says that if you go through these logical steps, you start with the fact that Jesus claimed he was God, and we covered this in the live stream from yesterday, that if you also say that the New Testament is accurate, and then in that Jesus is claiming to be God, and in that he is giving these teachings and these miracles, his death, burial, and resurrection, if this is all true, then you're left with only three possibilities. But we start with a series of assumptions. The first assumption is that Jesus described in the Bible actually existed. So Jesus is an historical person. He did live. And we'll look at that in another live stream, another video to explore, say, okay, did Jesus actually live? I don't know. Maybe somebody did back then, but he probably wasn't the person who ended up being the legend that's in the Bible. There's probably somebody else. Okay. Maybe he's an amalgamation of a couple of people. Maybe he did die. The Romans killed him. And, well, he obviously died. I mean, everybody at that period died, but the Romans kill him. And so all these doubts are in there. And we'll look at this as being, say, as a question. How are we going to answer that? So next assumption is the New Testament account of Jesus. Is it accurate? So the Jesus described in the Bible existed. That's assumption number one. The next assumption is that the New Testament account of Jesus was accurate? The third and fourth assumptions are Jesus performed the miracles and taught sound moral teachings, and Jesus claimed to be God, the creator of the universe. Now, we did that yesterday. We went through and said, in the Bible, where did Jesus say, I am God, worship me? And not using those words, because those are English words. He used Jewish terms and phrases, and he basically showed the people in the area his credentials by his miracles, by what his claims were and everything, saying that he is God. And then because of those claims, then there is the opportunity for worship. So let's look at this trilemma. We're going to do it as a diagram, as a logic diagram. And if you're familiar with this, I'm a programmer, so there's all sorts of different diagrams that we work with. And there's flow charts. And so we're going to use some different type of styles here and take this logic and work it through. We're just looking at logic statements to say, if this happens, then these are the results. So Jesus, we're going to start with the first one saying Jesus's claims were true. And this is a binary answer. It's either yes or no. Either Jesus's claims that he was God were either true or false. There's no in between. Remember, we're already starting with the assumptions earlier, and based on those assumptions, we're asking this. So if they were true, let me say, if they were false, if Jesus' claims were false, then he either knew they were false or he didn't. Another binary question. Did he know that his statements were false? Yes or no? Well, if he didn't know that his statements were false, then he would have mental problems, because obviously someone who goes around seriously claiming that he is God, the creator of the universe, and all the other things that go with that, then he's a lunatic. If you have a good friend who all of a sudden says, I woke up this morning and I discovered that I'm God, you would say, are you feeling okay? Are you, man, stop messing with me. Come on, serious. You would ask all sorts of questions. You would not believe him. So yeah, if his claims were false and he knew they were false, then, or he didn't know they were false, then he would be a lunatic. So let's look at some of the arguments about Jesus as a lunatic. This would be the arguments for him being a raving madman. Now, there's several levels that we have on lunacy. You got a raving madman on one side, and then you've got somebody with just some kind of mental issues or something on the other side. There's a bit of a spectrum here. So we're going to look at all these different arguments for and against. He believed he was God. This is an argument for saying he was crazy. As an atheist, you would look at this possibly and say, there's no way. Come on, there's not a God. And someone starts claiming that he is God. He's obviously nuts or trying to sell you something. So he believed he was God. This is evidence for that. He also confronted the religious rulers without fear. So maybe some kind of psychosis going on, because there were real consequences for doing what he did. And also ticking off the Roman government, that's going to get you killed. And it did get him killed. So it ended his life and death. So you could look at this and saying, possibly first century AD, you got this guy, Jesus, going around in Roman occupied Israel saying, I am God. The Jews are going to hate him. The Romans are going to say, you trying to take over our authority here or what, dude? And his life would be short. So, okay, those are the arguments for him being a lunatic. What about him against him being a lunatic or a raving madman? Well, a lunatic couldn't perform miracles. Again, we're going with the assumption that the record in the New Testament was correct, because otherwise, what are we going to work with here, right? You can just make things up, and it doesn't. You can say whatever you want. So we'll go with the record of the New Testament, because as an actual record from the first century, a lunatic couldn't perform miracles. His arguments then would contradict, even if he was only slightly bonkers, or this is another option, he wasn't really a lunatic, he was just misinformed. He believed what he was saying, but he was just wrong about it. Either one of those options, given a long enough period of time, his arguments would contradict. His philosophy wouldn't make sense. And that just, it wouldn't go anywhere with it. So what about occasional delusion? Somebody who is not totally bonkers, but only mildly delusional from time to time. I'm going to throw up a comment here. Raving madman. Whoa. Okay. I should probably read these before I put them up. But that would be a subject for another live stream. Raving madman, probably Muhammad. Okay. And we'll take a look at that. You guys are just giving me all sorts of different live streams to do here. This is material. Okay. But just focusing on Jesus right now. Occasional, we're going to look at he could either be on one end of the spectrum for insanity, a raving lunatic. On the other end of the spectrum, he could be, well, he only has occasional delusions. And I've seen this as an argument. So here's a question that that was given, or a statement that's given for that argument. It's possible to believe that you are something you are not and still say good things. True. So Jesus wasn't totally bonkers. He was only partially bonkers. And it's possible to believe something that you're not and still say good things. Okay. Occasionally, we're not just talking about believing some minor differences, having some minor mental problems here. We're talking about somebody who has occasional delusions, and these delusions are that you're God. Well, if it's only occasional, then what happens when you're back in your sound mind and realize that you're not God? I think reality would hit you. If you had an occasional delusion, then you come out of that delusion after a couple of days, a month or so, and somebody approaches you about it, you'd say, yeah, well, and you probably fudge it. So occasional delusions is not going to work. He'd have to be bonkers for 3 solid years plus. And I say 3 years because that was the time of his ministry. And believing that you are God is not a mild mental illness. Believing you're God is on the extreme of the delusions of grandeur. You've got one end of the delusion believing that you're a better basketball player than you are. Okay, so let's say that you do that. Let's say that you have a delusion that you're a great basketball player. Now, you can't tell by seeing me sitting here that I'm 6'3" and I am a former NBA basketball player. No, that's not true. I'm short and I would get stomped on the court, but I might believe that I'm this great player. And I go out there and reality is going to hit me in the face as soon as I get on the court, that I'm not that good. So, but believing that you're a good basketball player is on one end of the spectrum. Believing that you're that good and you're not. Another, you start inching over a little bit, and you can believe that you're Napoleon. Well, if you actually truly believe that you're Napoleon, it's not going to take the basketball court to give you a little dose of reality. You might actually need some kind of therapy. But then, if you this good dose of reality will come by and hit you real hard. But believing that you are God is on the extreme of the delusions of grandeur. There we go. If you believe that you are God, the creator of the universe, that you can raise people from the dead and will judge everyone at the end of history, and you were alive before Abraham, the beginning of time, well, that's beyond nuts. Unless it's true. So the argument for being occasionally delusional, for this context, it's not going to work. To come every once in a while out, it's like every 2 weeks, I believe that I'm God. No, it's still nuts. How about another argument is mass hysteria, that Jesus, let's paint this picture, that Jesus is going out. He's well-meaning. He's a good guy. And he's got a crowd following him. And they start saying good things about him. Well, he starts believing the good things that they're saying. And they say even more. And he believes even more. And he goes out there and says these people need prayer. And he prays for them. And because of this mass hysteria, the people believe that they're actually being healed. And they're not. But everybody believes it. And this whole big hype keeps going. This would be an example of mass hysteria, mass psychosis, or mass hysteria. A good guy in a crowd with confirmation bias. Well, that answers the miracles question. That answers why he believed he was doing something good. And it answers why he gave moral teachings, because he actually believed this. Everything lines up. Okay. Maybe it was just, he wasn't really bonkers. It was just he and the crowd were bonkers. Well, there's some arguments against it, and eventually led to his death. This had to go on again for 3 years. Keeping mass hysteria going that long, the madness of crowds, I don't think you could. I don't think you could get it going that long. The miracles were more than psychosomatic. The blind from birth could see. The crippled could walk. He could walk on water and raise Lazarus from the dead. These are not just psychosomatic. Oh, I'm suddenly feeling better. My back no longer hurts. Oh, the headache that I had. We're talking about things that were physical demonstrations that were not just in somebody's head. So mass hysteria could not go on that long, and the people would not actually be healed. So we're going to have to take a step back from the lunatic concept and say that that's not really a possibility. So let's look at the diagram again and say, what is the next step? Well, if Jesus' claims were not true, and he knew that they were not true, then he would be a liar. That's the next step. Was Jesus a liar? And again, just like with the lunatic side, there are several different possibilities for somebody lying. Why would somebody lie? Well, let's look at the con man argument. He got people to do what he wanted. Okay. This would be a good motivation. And I'm going to stop right here and say, we can't really see his motivation. We can see his actions and his words, but we don't see his thoughts. So it's a little bit difficult to get to understand what Jesus's motives were. But over time, we can, because somebody's motives, just like when I tell my friends, if you're going to marry somebody, get to know them for a while, not just a couple of months, a long time. Because during that long time period, you can get to weasel out who that person really is, to see that does this person really say who they are. You get to see that person in stressful situations. You get to see that person when they wake up maybe on the wrong side of the bed and they come to see you. They may not be the nice person that you thought they were, that they pretend to be all the time. Well, over time, we get to see that with Jesus too. We also get to see him in private. We get to see what his actions are. And those two things would show his motives. So Jesus then is, he would not, work with me here. PowerPoint, work with me. Jesus did not, finding my point here. As a con man, if he was a con man, he would get people to do what he wanted. And he claimed to be God to get attention and worship. He was a narcissist. These are the arguments for saying that he's a liar. You get people to do what you want, and you get their praise. You're a narcissist. Either one of those sides, hey, these are motivations for a con man. So Jesus got that. He got people to do what they wanted, and he got attention. So he must be a narcissist, right? Well, not necessarily true, because he really didn't get very much. If he was a con man, he was a failed con man. He was poor. He didn't make a whole lot of money. You would think that if he was a con man, his motives would be something either material or praise from people, so he could get everybody, hey, look at me. As a con man, if his motives were material wealth, he was awful. And he would have found another, maybe starting to sell, I don't know, magic carpets or something instead of doing what he was doing. And he also died an excruciating death. Not a good plan for a con man. If it were the narcissistic side, the attention came with adversity. A narcissist would, over time, eventually blame someone else. If bad things happened, he would find someone else to blame. That's the typical reaction of a narcissist. So, as a con man, he would have given up. As a narcissist, just looking for attention, he would have started blaming other people when things started going wrong. He started getting a lot of pressure. First year, yeah, people were loving him. Second year, getting a little sticky. Third year, no way. Yeah, it would be over if he were a narcissist. And there's a fourth answer or argument against the con man, and that is his miracles. You couldn't do these miracles if you're just a con man. Maybe able to get away with some. Maybe no, you could talk to this guy, give him some money on the side. Hey, I want you to tell everybody, pretend that you're this blind man, and then I come over and I heal you. Except they knew this blind man that Jesus healed from birth. He was blind. Everybody knew the cripple. They knew these people that were healed. They were a fixture in the city. So trying to just bribe someone as an actor to do this, that's not going to work. The miracles were real. So what about somebody who is coerced to be a liar? This would be a patsy, someone who is, I don't know, you got the group of guys and they're just like talking this he's not very smart, talking him into doing something for, hey, let's get him to go and talking Jesus into doing something, doing the dirty work for them. I guess that could be a possibility. I guess he could be coerced into lying, coerced into saying all this stuff. But if you look at his life, it just doesn't come through. It doesn't really stand up to scrutiny because his actions and words were inconsistent with somebody who was coerced. He showed leadership in the face of adversity. If somebody was just playing him like a puppet, when he starts getting the adversity face to face from the Pharisees, from the Romans, from the Sadducees, all these different groups, if he was just a puppet, he would crumble. And if he was a pushover, a patsy that was conned into this, he would also crumble. It wouldn't hold up. It would just fall apart. So if we're saying that someone coerced him into being a liar, then who was pulling his strings? Who was telling him to do what he did? Would it have been the Romans? What motive would the Romans have to get a Jew riled up? Well, maybe they were tired of this special state status that the Jews had and say, you know what? If we get them to rebel, then we can just crush them. Now, that did happen in 70 AD. The Romans said, finally, enough. They came in, squashed them, tore down the temple, put their own temple up in its place, and just wiped them out. So you guys are now Romans. No special treatment here. But there would have been easier ways to do that from their point of view than to just have a Jew go through this. They didn't have to justify their actions to anybody. They didn't have to go plead to the court of public opinion to try to get everybody behind them for war. This is not the case. They already ruled the land. All they had to do is change their policy. They didn't need to have some puppet set up a failed rebellion. So they had the justification for going in there and declaring martial law. They already had that justification. They could do that on the spot. What about the religious the religious elite, the Pharisees or the Sadducees? Would they have any motive for setting up a Jesus character? Anything against the Romans that they could have done? Anything to build themselves up better in the status in the eyes of people? Hey, if we show everybody that we're better than this guy, we'll make ourselves look better. They had that going on all the time. They didn't need this. They didn't need Jesus for this. If anything, Jesus caused more problems for them, especially with to the Romans. And they did not want Jesus going out and causing a rebellion where they would have their special privileges taken away. Rebels, would there be rebels that would be behind Jesus? The zealots that would say, let's get him going so we can overthrow the Roman Empire. Well, if that's the case, he was a pretty bad puppet, because his kingdom was not of this earth, he told Pontius Pilate. There were so many things he did that were passive, that were not the mark of a rebel, of a zealot, of a leader of an occupied people wanting to overthrow their oppressors. This was not that. He did not exemplify that at all. So you really have a hard time. I would like to have somebody give a good, solid argument for saying Jesus was a coerced liar. He was a puppet, and this was the puppeteer. And these are the reasons why, and this is what they got out of it. I don't see anything for that. Okay, another liar, the joking liar. This is an argument I heard somebody say, you know what? How do we know that Jesus wasn't just joking about all this I am God stuff? He's just pretending. It's like, I'm just pulling your leg, man. It's no big deal. I'm a prank, just pulling a prank. I've got a YouTube video or a YouTube channel. I'm just pulling this stuff, pulling you guys into it. You're going to be on TikTok, whatever, Instagram. So could that happen in today's society? Yeah. But what about then? What about in their society? 3-year-long joke? Not going to happen. There's no way that he could pull off this prank for 3 years. What's the point? I mean, you got to get something else out of it. You're just looking for laughs. You do it for maybe a couple hours, maybe a few days, maybe a couple weeks. But 3 years? No, not just a joke. And what about the masses and the religious leaders? They wouldn't put up with him. They wouldn't put up with what he was saying, because what he was saying was so bad in their mind, people didn't joke about this. It's just like, I don't know, I'm going to go into Harlem and just start using the N-word as a joke. That's not going to work. No one's going to think that's funny. I mean, your YouTube channel for 3 years, you're dead, dude. It's not going to work, right? So what else was there besides that? If he spoke about being God, this was a life and death matter on par with someone calling in a bomb threat and then claiming they were only joking. In their mind, claiming that you were God was on this level. It's a bomb threat. No. So the idea of him being a joking liar, that's not going to hold water. How about a poetic liar? What would a poetic liar be? He's only speaking in metaphors. I am a son of God. We all are all children of the stars. Birthed from the water, we cometh forth like springs and breath of fresh air. Was he a poet, just speaking in metaphorical terms? Well, just like the humor, the masses would not would not go for these words. These were words that he would not be able to just use on the fly like that. And the Pharisees and the disciples pinned him down, and Jesus answered him. So if it were just, I'm just being poetic about this. When the Pharisees came to him and said, are you saying this? Is this what you're trying to say? Is this what you're, and he defends it. He doesn't say, no, but in a manner of speaking, I am a son of God. He doubled down on all those, a poetic liar. So I think we can say that the liar scenario, just like the lunatic scenario, does not work. So we've gone through two possibilities, a lunatic and a liar. Those are only two possibilities that exist that I can see. I've seen other arguments, the poetic or using metaphors. Well, that would be a liar. He was only he only had slight mental issues. Well, he was still going to the lunatic camp because he still thinks that his statements were true. The only other logical option that remains is that Jesus is Lord. When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Yes, that was said by the prophet Sherlock Holmes in The Sign of the Four by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So I'm going to take a quick look at some of the comments here. So this is going to be a slight interruption. I see there's a lot going on. Unfortunately, it's a little difficult to do this. And I don't know. Sometimes there's conversations that are already in process in a live stream. But I want to pull out anything that is possibly an argument used for what we're talking about here. And I'm gonna by risk throw this up here. I don't not know what he's saying. I agree with James Witz. I agree with the trilemma, but I think Steel Manning rebuttals will prepare Christians to deal with oppositions. Off the top of my head, the accounts would be wrong, or it's just legendary development. The legendary argument. Okay, so I'm going to put this out here to you guys. Was there any holes in these arguments that were given? Was there something that I missed other than legendary? Was there some other nuance to this that I should have added? I'm going to leave that up as a question because it might take you a little while to type. And I'm going through the other comments here to see, and please forgive me if I'm missing one. No, that was not one. I think this is maybe the only one we're dealing with here. But I think it's Steel Manning rebuttals will prepare Christians to deal with opposition. I think what you're saying here, James, is that if we look at a broader picture, more arguments, and not just the lunatic liar, two different camps that they go in, maybe there's some other options that are there. Let me go back to this. Are you saying that there are other arguments that the ones that are given here? Remember, we're going under the assumption that Jesus did claim he was God and that the Bible's account of his life was accurate. So all the miracles, what he said, everything in there truly happened. Okay, I'm just going to give it half a minute more, and then I'm going to move on. This is the problem of doing a live stream and trying to do everything like this, and then we got to see what are people's reactions. Okay, because there is one other that I want to put up here, and this is something that you kind of allude to. There we go. Okay. By faith, I'm putting this up here without reading it first. Basically, I'm saying let's look at the atheist arguments against the trilemma. We agree with, but they scoff at it. We agree with it, but they scoff at it. Okay, so very good point. So to get ready for this live stream, what I did is I went through and I looked at some of the arguments that were given. And that's why when I talked about the lunatic option, that it was more than just saying he was completely bonkers. Some of the people were saying, well, he only had occasional delusions. Well, I think the rebuttal for that, maybe correct me if you think I'm wrong, is that what do you mean by occasional? And it's not just mild. It's not like the guy was, I don't know, manic depressive or something. He goes through cycles and then comes out of it, and then he's all manic again. Then he's going through a depressed state. We're not talking about something like this. This is somebody who honestly actually believes he has got almost like a schizophrenic type of episode with different personalities. He comes out and he's this businessman or this carpenter, and then he goes in this episode where he believes he is God. It's one of his personalities. If you look at the life of Jesus in the New Testament, there's no room for that. You don't see that kind of behavior. What I saw with the atheist arguments was really just thinking in abstract away from actually reading the New Testament. Because if they looked at the account in the New Testament, a lot of the arguments they throw out there would just crumble because it doesn't fit the narrative. Another example would be the whole coercion thing. That was another argument that I saw the atheists were given, that he was just talked into it. Yeah, but by whom? Who would have done that? What would they have gotten out of it? And for as long as he did it, I don't know. Maybe they have good answers for that. Maybe there is, a debate or dialogue that we can have with this. And they would also abstract this into different camps and say, well, he wasn't truly a lunatic. That's somebody that is completely insane. But it still falls within he didn't know that his statements about him being God were false. Okay, I'm going to pull this up next. I actually think from atheist view, John covered it awesomely. And your check's in the mail. Don't worry about it. I got you covered. Even the I'm joking. Yeah, that was one that came up because I saw in the comments of one of these guys, he said, yeah, I had a friend that was joking about all this time that he was so-and-so, and it was just a big joke for him. Okay. We are in a completely different society in the U.S. than what they were there in first century Judea. No, people don't joke. Just like the whole thing about, saying racial stuff in some inner city locations. Dude, you don't do this. It's just dumb. And most people just joking, they know when to call it quits. And the ones who don't, it ends for them pretty quickly. We're talking 3 years with Jesus. He wasn't just doing this for the fun of it. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint. What I wanted to say is there is one more that was there, the legend. And the only way that you get to the legend is by saying that the Bible is fake. And remember, in the beginning, we were saying one of the assumptions is the Bible is true. The legend is this sort of ghost image that a lot of people, without thinking this through, will come to this conclusion. They'll come to the conclusion that, well, I read some of the Bible and Jesus says, be nice to other people and stuff like that. So he's a really good person and a good teacher. And, they eventually killed him because they didn't like what he said. So that's part of a legend. Another legend is, well, he never lived and he was just something made up by his disciples. Or a bunch of Jewish people in the first or second century, or maybe even the fourth or fifth century, because that's another misconception, is the Bible wasn't written until centuries later. So these are arguments that'll come up that are not a part of our original assumption that the Bible is true. So if we have these three, then we should add another one. And that is this mysterious, made-up Jesus, who's the legend with a smoldering smile. What are the pros with the legend? He makes no demands on you. The Jesus of my dreams, the Jesus I've made up. who I don't have to go to historical records and actually find out what he said. He doesn't challenge me. He doesn't say anything that I need to do. I can do whatever I want, and he can be whatever I want him to be. These are the good reasons why we should believe Jesus is a legend. No, of course that's false. Why is it false? Because he makes no demands on you. He's a fairy tale. It's not a good thing. He's whatever you want him to be. That's not a good thing. You could believe, I don't know, this cup teaches me all. I believe in this cup. And I'm not responsible for anything because this cup has absolutely no demands on my life. And also, the guy next door gets to believe that Jesus is anything that he wants him to be. So now we got multiple Jesuses around because it's not based on anything. It's just whatever legend or thing that you can create in your own mind. And just do your own thing, man. Just be yourself. Just don't bother anybody. It's okay. It's all right. It's all good. He's not real. He's plastic. And he's not going to help you. And he's not the historical Jesus. In order for the legend to be a logical option, one must ignore that Jesus said that he is God, that he is an historical person, as spoken about in the testimony of the New Testament. Otherwise, he falls into the other two camps. We're back either into a lunatic or a liar. So those are our options. I'm pretty sure, and yes, I am biased. I will admit that I'm biased. But I'm looking at this from a logical point of view as much as I can. This logic diagram that goes through. Like I said, I'm an engineer. I'm a programmer. I write programs for data acquisition and controls. There's a lot of Boolean logic that goes in here, and this is one of these setups. There's only so many options that are there, given the account in the New Testament. You're left with one option. And so that gives you a choice. With all the other options being knocked out and Jesus as Lord being the only real one there, you then have a choice. Either accept him as God and Lord or reject him. That is your choice. So we either face the facts or, like yesterday, do what this guy does. Tomorrow, from the sublime to the entertainment side, we're going to take a look at the movie The Shift. We're going to do a review. I'm looking forward to this. I have not seen it. I will be seeing it later today. And you will get a fresh perspective. Just, again, only our opinions. I will be working with your brother in Christ. And we'll take a look at it, pull it apart a little bit. And just like we do, we're trying to look at entertainment from a biblical standpoint and say, are there any real good themes here we can pull out that we can use this as a point to talk to other people? And Friday, we'll look at the Greek New Testament. Why did Jewish disciples who spoke Aramaic on the streets and spoke Hebrew in the temple, why did they write the New Testament in Greek? Does that make any sense? So until then, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I very much like the comments. Thank you guys for all the participation that you had. And please let me know future episodes, what other things that you would like to cover. We're going to keep going back and forth between the theological and entertainment sides. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.